I was stuffing a turkey. The baby did a poopy nappy, and I asked my ex-husband in front of all our friends. He said no. I just remember this rage of steak knives there, and I would have got him between the eyeballs. I was so scared by it. I left the marriage 8 days later.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium Show. I'm delighted to be here, delighted that you're here, and delighted that my guest today is Sam Beau Patrick. Sam has been working in the health space since 1987 and in many different areas, being a nurse, working in the pharmaceutical industry, and more recently with a big focus on prevention and hormonal health. What we're going to be doing is diving deep into the topic of hormonal health. It's an area that really impacts potential and performance. And often we don't realize it until it becomes a major problem. So welcome, Sam. I'm so happy to see you. How are you today?
Yes. So good to be here and having this conversation. It's so important that people, I call it their hormone literacy. And I think now we're entering an age where people are curious enough, we put together back behind us any shame or worries about hormones, and people are honestly wanting to know more. So it's perfect timing for everyone who's listening to this, and hopefully we'll be able to shed some light on hormones for them.
Well, let's jump straight in. And before we jump into the topic, I'd love you to just briefly introduce yourself and just share a little bit about how you came to be focused on the work that you do today.
Yes, well, I started nursing when I was 17 and had this incredible career as a nurse, emergency nurse, ICU nurse, coronary care nurse, and absolutely loved being patient side. But there was something missing. I saw people coming in extreme circumstances, bandaging them up, sending them back, but knowing a huge percentage of them were going to ricochet back in. And the missing part for me was always nutrition. When people are dying or very vulnerable, you get to see the core person. And I saw there was a lot of room for improvement with how we manage people and their health, and in those instances, their non-health or their illness. So it made me dive a bit deeper. I did burn out. ED can do that to people. And I had 9 years in pharmaceuticals, working for the biggest companies in the world, traveling the world, educating doctors, doing ground rounds where there's 300 doctors in the room, explaining to them the latest pharmacological agents and improvements, how they work, etc., and developed a real passion for the human biology and physiology. And then I really wanted to match what I passionately felt, that food could do a lot more for people than was ever being given credit for. So I went back to uni. I had 14 years at uni all up, and gained a bachelor in health science, specialise in complementary medicine, which means I'm a naturopath, nutritionist and herbal specialist as well. So to me, even this morning, someone said, "Oh, don't you find that's the opposite, being a naturopath and having this pharmacological background?" And I'm like, no, to me, it's how it should be. We should be able to, as health practitioners, step back, know our lane, but also know that at the end of the day, we're giving someone an opinion. Fast track to 5 staff, 3 clinics in the early 2000s. I've been doing this now for 24 years, to 2009. And I talk about it in one of my books, where I had a hormone breakdown. It was almost like an implosion, but it was internal. And that really set me on a path of discovery. And what I discovered, as many patients that we had coming to my clinic, was a massive hormone imbalance. And at the time, the documentation, the access to the studies were very limited for women, but also for men in understanding their hormones, unless it was a disease. And that gets picked up by endocrinologists, and it's a disease. But the shades in between, the sex hormone imbalances, the high testosterone in women, the low testosterone in men, really still, even to this day, isn't fully appreciated with how prevalent it is in society and what we're seeing, particularly in the workforce. So that's my passion.
So let's jump in and talk about hormones. They're clearly very important. You discovered this, through your own lived experience. But what did you discover? Like, how do hormones impact our performance, both as an individual and something that we need to be aware of as leaders, managing people through different ages?
Yeah, to back up and explain what a hormone is. So it's the internal courier system. So I see it like we're based in Australia, so it's like our Australia Post. It takes a message from one part of the body to another part to get a response. And then there's a feedback loop to the originating messenger station. Now, if that receiving organ doesn't get that message, more hormone is sent down. Or if it's dampened and not responding, as often happens, then the battery's flat. The hormones still go and amplify, and that brings disharmony to the body in a really obvious way when people understand what's going on. Now, in terms of performance, my foray into it was this dinner party, and I talk about it very candidly. I was married at the time. I had 2 little kids and breastfeeding and back at uni doing something else and la-di-da-di-da. Decided to have a dinner party just outside from Christmas, and it was just one thing that tipped the apple cart over, and that was a baby did a poopy nappy in the middle of this dinner party, and I was stuffing a turkey, and I asked my ex-husband then, "Can you come and change so and so's nappy?" And in front of all our friends, he said no. And I just remember this rage. And I was stuffing a turkey, and it was lucky for him because there was set of steak knives there, and I would have got him between the eyeballs. But the thing that frightened me was the rage. Like I'm a pretty, I don't know that I'm placid. I'm Italian and can be quite animated, but I'm not an angry person, and that really frightened me. So I went on this little quest. I went to doctors, I went to spiritual healers, chiropractors, you name it. Please help me understand and unravel what happened inside me that night because I don't want it to ever happen again. And in fact, I was so scared by it. I left the marriage 8 days later. I left and didn't go back. I felt shame, guilt, all these things. And at the time, women expressing rage was not a topic on the table. It just wasn't talked about. And I was your boss babe. I was your quintessential 35-year-old, high-powered executive woman, juggling, being incredible to everyone, going to the gym, eating really clean, and still had this issue that blind spotted me. It didn't blind spot me, it hit me with a baseball bat. So now I know in terms of performance, I say to people, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know yourself. And if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your hidden talent. It can be the most crippling thing if your hormones are out, but it can be the most untapped resource as well. I'm a huge advocate for people, particularly in leadership, knowing what you're missing, what's in the room that you haven't spotted yet, because the worst thing is having an implosion moment like I did, and it pulls it from underneath you, and you have to rebuild from almost scratch.
Wow, that's interesting. So what was out of balance in that moment when you really lost it? Clearly it was hormonal, but what was the specific hormone that was out of balance that you discovered?
Yeah, and this for me became my best-selling book, and that was about women in leadership roles and high testosterone. So medically, we understand that. So there's female sex hormones and male sex hormones. Both sexes make both of them. So women make the male hormone, which is testosterone, and males make estrogen as well, which is considered a female hormone. Now, with women, when we produce too much testosterone, we can definitely morph into men, get whiskers, become a bit angry, a bit ballsy, a bit aggressive. And when I wrote my best selling book on it, Beauty and the Beast, there was little to no research on it. In fact, the only research was on female inmates. And that showed, not surprising, that those who had committed these heinous crimes had high testosterone. Now, at the time, and still to this day, medical treat high testosterone in women as a sex hormone issue. I now know from my extensive research and doing saliva testing and working women in high performing roles that it's a stress hormone. The key to it, so it can create deep voice, pimples, belly fat, unwanted facial hair, unwanted body hair. And women do start morphing into men. It's the leading cause of infertility in women in Australia and developed countries.
Wow.
75, 85% of women who can't conceive naturally have this problem. Too much testosterone.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
So it's managed medically as a metabolism issue, and they put on anti-diabetic medications or diabetic medications.
Wow.
I treat it and manage it. I'm allowed to say treat in Australia. I help women through the process by helping them understand what elevates it. And it's usually time pressures. It's a survival hormone. So you get in my way, I'm going to rip you apart or lift a car because I've got stuff to do. So it's a very masculine, aggressive hormone. And if we don't switch it off when we don't need it, we leave the work environment, it stays on. And then women have troubles relaxing at home. We can't feel joy because we're in survival mode. You cannot be experiencing joy and feeling like your life's under threat at the same time. They're polar opposite states. So what I now know, particularly with that boss babe archetype, is I say to her, don't stress less. I never use that term. I say, let me show you how to have fun. because when women have fun, we naturally drop testosterone. So I've learned a lot, and that really is one of my passion projects or callings to the world, is to help women in these pressured positions switch off.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that the hormonal imbalance is there to help you survive with a particular situation. If you're in a highly pressurized work environment, which is changing fast, and you've got to make big decisions, the testosterone will go up. You need that to be able to survive and cope. And I guess it will be similar in the opposite with men who are in a more nurturing environment, who are looking after children, that the estrogen will go up to allow them to cope with that situation. Is that right?
100%.
Okay. So, okay, because it's happening unconsciously. So when it's around, okay, learn how to switch it off. And you introduce the word fun, which I'd love to explore further. Bring that to life. And many people listening to this will relate to that. I relate to it. We're in environments, and this is going to be the same for men as well as women, but in any kind of environment that requires that level of pressure, the body will produce more testosterone to allow you to cope. So how do you switch that off? And does it take time? I'm curious to understand how people can self-manage this.
Yeah. So just to make a differential between men and women. So both sexes, whilst they produce testosterone, and men a lot more of testosterone than women, ideally. Trust me, when I did my test, mine was as high as a man's, and I see that regularly.
Right.
Testosterone in a man makes them clearer thinking, able to execute, and that's their power position. In men under stress, usually cortisol goes up and they start suppressing testosterone. So
Okay.
it's slightly different
Okay.
phenomenon. In females, though, put us through deadlines or an email from the boss that makes us nervous. I've identified 4 different archetypes in the workplace where this does affect women. It's corporate ladies, it's competitive women, athletes, and women who have too many carbohydrates. And that's because carbohydrates, which boost insulin and testosterone compete on the cell wall. So one will go up. If insulin goes up, belly fat sits on the ovaries, etc. If testosterone goes up, the whiskers, the aggression, the inability to relax. I call it female hormone disorder, not polycystic ovary syndrome, for women who are listening to this and curious about this. That's how I frame it up. Rarely is only testosterone. It will often be coupled with high cortisol. Now, the opposite hormone, and I had this wonderful encounter with the gentleman from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, John Gray, about 9 years ago in Dubai. He was speaking, and I went up to John at halftime, and I had my book, and I said, "John, that was a fantastic talk, bloody blah." And I said, "I specialize in testosterone and high levels of testosterone in women." It's like, "Oh my God, you're the other side to the coin." And he got up there in a full atrium in the second half of his talk, and he said, "Everybody turn around and look at that lady. She is talking about the opposite of what I talk about, and that is high testosterone in women." What I learned from him is if we can get women to raise their oxytocin, testosterone drops instantly. Obviously, this is general information only. This is my spin on it and how I manage it. So I help women raise oxytocin, because as soon as that hormone goes up, their testosterone drops. You cannot be stressed and feeling safe and secure and happy at the same time. They're opposite states. So rather than trying to stress less and worry about meditating, most women with this problem struggle to lie down and clear their head.
They
Think
can't.
about a rainy day. They go, "I'm stressed. I'm thinking about
Yeah,
storms."
makes the problem worse, really. It just kind of
Does,
adds to the problem, doesn't it? Compounds it.
because they don't feel successful doing it, and it frustrates them more. So I'll sit them down and say, "Okay, what gives you fun? What activities, when you do them, you lose track of time, you lose track of who you are," and the little girl bubbles up. And they'll say, "I don't know. I can't remember." I go, "Well, let's just pretend you're 6 and you're sitting in a tree at school. What would you say to me if I was your playmate and you're going to grab my hand? What would you say? Let's go and do blah." They go, "Oh, I'd say let's go and run through puddles." Like, sweet. That's your homework for this week. You're going to find a
Right,
puddle
the
and
puddles.
run through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we let that little person in us take full reign or control, oxytocin just naturally
Okay.
and testosterone naturally drops.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, what we're saying is we can't change the system, that we're currently in, because we're in environments that might be hugely pressurized. But what we can change is the way we respond to those to be able to increase the
Oxytocin. So
oxytocin
exactly.
dopamine as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And look, it would be great to start addressing the work structure that's not actually bringing out the best in people at the moment. It's burning them out, not bringing them out. But that is a bigger elephant to start chewing as such.
Indeed, and it requires people to be able to be in the right state to make those big changes. And if everyone's in survival state, then they're just getting through rather than really putting the energy into the step changes that are required to change the system. But tell me more about what people can do apart from running through puddles. So people are listening to this and are feeling out of equilibrium. We bring it back to that because their hormones are out of equilibrium. They're continuously on. And what can they do to be able to shift that around for them so that they do bring their bodies back into equilibrium?
I'm all about testing, not guessing, particularly people over the age of 45, because symptoms, say for menopause or perimenopause, can mimic high estrogen or low estrogen. The symptoms are the same. So saliva testing is the most accurate way. Now, your audience is going to be global, but in Australia, for example, that's not picked up by Medicare, so it's an out-of-pocket expense. But saliva testing is the ultimate way to test hormones. 20 years ago, doctors wouldn't have bothered checking hormones at all because they say it's a waste of time on bloods. It still is a waste of time on blood testing in majority of the cases. So saliva test is the best way. It's a spit test. It comes to the house. You spit into a little tube. I now do it, the cortisol over the day, which gives me so much information about how that body's stress response is throughout the day. And so many times people get their results and go, I had no idea. I thought I was really cool and relaxed. I'm like, no, you're actually quite, and they
Really?
see it and they're like, oh.
How would you do it over the day then?
So cortisol, you get these little test tubes posted out, do a saliva test on waking, late morning, late afternoon, and just before going to bed.
Got it.
And cortisol plays so many roles in the body, but one of its key roles, apart from stress, is dictating our 24-hour body clock. So in the morning when we wake up, it should be at its highest. In fact, it's one of the key hormones that wake us up. Melatonin should at that point drop down. And then over the day, cortisol peaks around 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock during the day. And that's when we should be doing our brain work. So to match into our biorhythms, we should be doing all the high thinking, pressured number stuff in that time slot of the day. And then as the day drops away, around 6, 7 o'clock at night, it should really be coming down low. And then melatonin, our sleep hormone, will start to bounce in, which is the hormone that makes us feel sleepy. And that's what gives us our quality sleep. So checking that 4 different points over the day gives me a really good understanding, a very good understanding of how they're performing. I frequently, in men, low cortisol levels. They're burnt out.
Is that what you
It's
see? If someone's burnt out, you see low cortisol.
Yes, yeah. And variations of that. They might be, some people say, oh, I've got mid-afternoon fatigue and I just feel like a nap. But is it in my head? Am I just disengaged with work? We'll see their cortisol might start super high, so they're wired but tired. And then as the day comes on, it drop too quickly, and they do need a sleep or a siesta because they're bottoming out. So there's all sorts of variations, and I'm consistently surprised, as are people. There's a massive misunderstanding with how we're going internally to how we feel a lot of the time.
So that's fascinating. Have you noticed an upward trend? Well, an assumption that I have is that life is becoming more stressful. There's more demands on us, both personally and professionally. And have you noticed that in the works that you've been doing over the years?
Yeah, definitely. And look, it's an interesting shift because 40 years ago, there weren't as many women in the workforce. And there certainly weren't as many women in these senior roles and leadership roles because we were just coming into the workforce, but now women are assuming these higher position roles. So we're seeing a different montage of stresses and things happening in the workforce. I think it's a real paradox. We've got availability to more in our lives than ever before. Gyms are open 24/7. If you're hungry at 3 a.m., you can appease that desire. And yet here we are sliding further and further down this burnout track. And burnout is more prevalent than it's ever been. Infertility is more prevalent than it's ever been. Insomnia and broken sleep is at an all-time high. So the hormone mix and what we're really missing is getting worse, not better.
Wow. And we need to just sort of take a pause and just allow what you said to sink in. But if we bring it back into a leader who's managing a team and they're bringing EAPs, there's a lot of initiatives that are going into the workplace, and yet the problem seems to be getting worse. So apart from changing everybody's behavior and the entire system, which takes time, what can the leader do to be able to at least help people understand what the problem is? Because in some ways it feels like an easy way to move forward. Like with awareness comes the opportunity to take action.
Yeah, I think the biggest improvement that can be done from leadership is to ensure that your team is truly experiencing joy and fulfillment in the workplace, because that tells the leader a lot about how hormonally they're adjusting to the workforce. And that's a deep dive question. That's not just a how are you going? Are you okay question? It's a deeper dive into really, do you feel like you're contributing to a higher purpose here? Do you enjoy coming to work or Sunday night? Are you fearing it? And what are these hidden agendas that you're getting out of work? And do you truly thoroughly thrive in this environment? If there's in there, then there's definitely those are the subtle cracks that the person might not be in the hormonal balanced equilibrium state that they might be. And that can be a conversation. Sit down and say, look, let's just leave everything at the door. I just really want to know how are you finding work? Do you enjoy it? And this isn't to kick you out or to challenge you. I just want to know, how are you going? What are the stresses? Are they work related? Are they in the home environment? And how can we collectively improve that? Because I know if you're feeling safe and secure and thriving, we're all going to benefit from that in this work environment.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that really aligns with Gallup's research. They did a big study last year looking at what followers want from their leaders. And the number one thing was one meaningful conversation a week. If we zoom out and just think, because a lot of this fits into that category of preventative care, I'm curious to understand where you think the future of preventative healthcare is going. Have things got so bad that now we're realizing that we have to shift our focus and take a different approach?
And someone who's been in the space of my profession being denigrated and questioned and undermined in a community that says that doctor knows best and drugs are the solution. So I've lived parallel with that environment for years, and I've got this fortunate position where I think pharmaceuticals are great. They get people off the cliff, but it's this underlying stuff that has to be done to keep them off the cliff. They've been called alternative practitioners. I think they're complementary in every single way. And what we're seeing is that these people are now going to become the doctors of tomorrow. And this is happening now in the States. It's fantastic. Person who speaks to you about food is going to become your doctor, because majority of imbalances and disequilibrium, this space of malnourishment of our soul, malnourishment of our food, malnourishment of our body's needs, which is rest and movement. So the people who have been focusing on this for years are now starting to bubble up as the most important person individually and also in corporate and workplaces. And we cannot ever underestimate touch and massage, and people who might have been scared to ask $60 an hour are suddenly going to be paid for their true worth. I feel that the next 18 months is going to be a massive shift in the preventative space, being led by America and how they're addressing food and different toxic burden on our body. So I feel very optimistic. And what I hope happens is we now need the nutritionists to step into that space. We now need the people who work with energetics in the work environment and ergonomics, and how do people interact with the screen and the pressure of AI. So we end up with a team of people that create this wonderful environment that brings out the best in the humanoid. I mean, we know the artificial experience is accelerating faster than the humanoid experience can keep up. And if we don't in the next 18 months make these changes and embrace all health practitioners, I think we'll find that humans are just going to become the collateral of a really exciting point in humanity.
I completely agree with what you said. There has been this approach where it's been one or the other rather than actually working together. It's like
Mm.
pharmaceuticals or natural remedies. Now it feels that we are being pushed to collaborate and to talk and to recognize that everybody does bring their own area of expertise, and the language and how we communicate is really what's required to be able to create a more positive future for humanity, let's say, with a rapid expansion of AI, collaborating and bringing AI into the mix can allow us to actually become more human and can allow us to actually do things that wouldn't have been possible before. So I share your optimism and certainly look forward to working with you to create that future. And but before we close, for people who are listening to this, we just scratched the surface, but how can people get in touch with you? How can people find out more? You've written, is it 9 books?
Yeah. My latest book is on corporate burnout and recognizing the red flags, because for me, the white elephant in the room is the hormone literacy and how we really need to start having these conversations like you and I are having. And we haven't touched on it, but men going through andropause. So a natural phenomena in a man's life is that towards the age of 40, usually 38, their testosterone declines. And we're seeing that manifest as depression, anxiety, heart disease. Low sex drive is one symptom, but all the other shades of grey are very, for me, big red flags that can be addressed nicely just by helping a man understand how to get his testosterone up naturally. So I've got 2 websites. One is for women under my name, sambeaupatrick.com. And there is a podcast there on Hormones with Sam. It's a little bite-sized bits of information if they watch this on YouTube. For men, I've got a website called menshealthyedge.com. There I've got articles about testosterone replacement, how to get your testosterone up, different things that guys might find interesting. And I've also got a podcast for men unpacking testosterone and speaking to some really iconic Australians, Trevor Hendy, Bruce Buffer from the UFC. People can reach out there, they can order saliva tests. And I'm only too happy to speak in workplaces too, because I think the more we understand, the more people we can help. And that's certainly what I signed up for about 40 years ago now. So happy to help.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And let me acknowledge you, Sam, for all the work that you've done. You really bring a very rounded perspective. Started in the emergency room and moved into the world of pharmaceuticals. You really understand that world, and then into the world of nutrition and lifestyle medicine. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'd love to dive deeper into men's health as well at some point, because it's such an important topic. So thank you so much for sparing some time to be with us today. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.